office admin person got the Harriet Montgomery Award, so this is Jennifer Day Donuts.
Nice.
That Dr. Toggle wanted y'all to have. So please come help yourself to donuts. I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick and then Maggie will get started, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Well,
Sugar donuts.
it's a mixture of donuts.
They look like they're from somewhere good.
They're Gibson's.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't
Is that
found that
blackberry or
out.
blueberry? Are we all
Try
right?
it.
You really can't go
I'm
wrong.
gonna find out. I'm very sorry.
My husband didn't have a groom's cake. He had a stack of Gibson's donuts.
They're so good.
And we drank milk together for his picture. He loves a glazed donut.
Who doesn't?
A good one.
A good one.
I prefer chocolate donuts.
He brought home like the Kroger, glazed donuts one day, and I was like, that's not worth it. I can't pass that up. I can't pass that up. I am.
There's,
Yeah.
please don't set this all alone, which Walmart donuts are not good by any means.
Okay.
I know, because I used to make them.
Okay.
But they have these that I can't ever, like, if I see them, I gotta have them. If they're chocolate, they look like chocolate donuts, chocolate covered donuts, but on the inside, it's like Bavarian chocolate milk, Bavarian chocolate milk, Bavarian chocolate milk, all the way around the donut. It's just-
I had the same
Cream.
question.
Yes,
Cream.
I don't like cream in
kind of like custard.
I don't like custard in my donuts. I just
Jelly?
don't like the texture of like custard and stuff. I could probably do jelly.
So we had a club in high school who met, it was the Better Business Club, but it was really just the donut club. And it had some every flavor from Krispy Kreme. And they had one that was like a sugar on the outside and was apple pie filling on the inside.
Oh, that sounds
so
amazing.
good. Oh gosh, yes.
It's so mental and mental disorders.
Yeah, right. So mental and emotional disorders. My name's Maggie Thompson. I'm in the doc program. I am a second, or I guess it's my second semester in the program. I am a licensed professional counselor with the mental health service provider designation. I've worked for the last 4-ish years at the Shelby County Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center. 3.5 of that was working as a homicide response counselor specifically before moving into my new role. And now I supervise a team that responds to community violence, mass violence, things like that. I supervise a clinician as well as 2 advocates. And so very passionate about the work that I do. If y'all have any questions about that, we're a very good resource, free and confidential counseling in the community. Just a quick plug for that. If you've ever experienced crime and live in Shelby County, or if your crime happened outside of it, you're still eligible as well. So that's a little bit about me. And so we're going to be talking about mental and emotional disorders today. We're going to review chapter 17. I understand that y'all have a hybrid class model, right? Where you read the chapters outside of it and then we come here and talk about it. Is that right? Okay. So we're going to talk about how to help students with mental and emotional disorders. We're going to look at a couple of case studies and scenarios. And we're going to talk about vicarious trauma as well as self-care. And then we're going to talk about the red, yellow, green card, things that y'all might struggle with, things you're apprehensive about, things that are good to go, things that are maybe a little bit in between. All right, any questions about all that before we get into it? Wonderful. All right, so chapter 17. Before I get into this, any questions first about chapter 17? I know it was pretty heavy and a lot of DSM stuff, a lot of diagnoses, different criteria, things like that. Anything that y'all have questions about? Anything you're just stuck on? So I summarized a little bit of the chapter. So mental health issues in children and adolescents are increasing, right? It's one of the big reasons that we're talking about this. 1 in 5 children will have a mental health disorder during their lifetime, and only 20% of those kids are going to receive mental health services. So we know that's staggering numbers, and we want to just be aware of that and how that impacts us as professionals. And we also have to recognize that, especially in Memphis, looking at community factors like poverty, poor education, lack of access to affordable health care, and mental health care specifically impact children's mental health. A number of other issues as well, but we won't get into all of that. Just kind of looking at that bigger lens as well when we look at this. So the DSM-5 is a system of diagnosis that assesses a person's mental and emotional functioning, and so the chapter did a good job of breaking down different things like conduct disorders, eating disorders, anxiety disorders, and mood disorders. There's a whole lot in there. So what information was surprising to y'all about this chapter? What kind of stood out? It's like, oh, I didn't know that before.
I think that what's kind of surprised me is that generalized anxiety is more common than social anxiety among adolescents and such. I thought it would have been social anxiety more since there's that time period of like social development.
Yeah, and forced social interaction too. I think would like breed that as well, definitely. How do you think that could impact kids that you're working with? Just like knowing the difference even.
Not pre-assigning like, oh, it's just because social things. Like, no, you might just have general anxiety.
Right, exactly. Like it makes sense in our brains to jump straight there and like kind of start pathologizing that other behavior, but it could just be general situation by situation anxiety. Good. Anybody else? I know there's a whole lot in there.
The tic disorders were really interesting to me. I know that's not maybe as common, something that we deal with in schools as much, but I know at least 2 handfuls of children who definitely, whether diagnosed or not, have them.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And that was a big one too on like TikTok, therapist TikTok for a while. Like I remember seeing a lot of kids like over pathologizing that in themselves too. And so I think just as a provider, knowing the diagnostic criteria can
Right.
be super helpful in that.
It could also really easily be misdiagnosed because my older brother, he was like diagnosed with like something with tics when he was younger, but later now as an adult, he's talking to a therapist who thinks it might actually be OCD.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah.
different. It's that different
Because
presentation.
it's like the compulsive
Yeah.
aspect. So it's very easy to like take one behavior and pre-assign it like a thing.
Exactly. And just because one kid presents like that doesn't mean that everyone will present it that exact same way. Absolutely. Any other surprising new information?
I think what you just said is a huge point when you're talking about all kinds of mental health, brain disease or disorders, is that every single person can look totally different, even if it's the same diagnosis.
Exactly. We talk a lot in our doc program. I'm doing practicum right now. And even just like all of us have such different experience in different field sites, and so we all look at things. I look at everything through a trauma lens, but some of my other coworkers see things as ADHD, and so sometimes even those symptoms look very similar in what you're looking at. And especially when you're talking about kids, right? Because nothing is fixed when it comes to kids. Everything is variable. Absolutely. Was anything confusing in the chapter? Anything that you were just like, oof, that doesn't really make sense? Need to walk that through.
So with IDD, so it said like it has to be, I don't know if it was saying, I know it said something before 18 years of age, but like is that saying you have to be diagnosed before 18 years of age because of the learning? I mean, I guess that's the way you can, it was like a development, an intellectual development disorder.
Yeah.
So it was like the onset has to be before 18 years of age, and I'm like, I just didn't, I guess, understand what it was trying to say, like, what do you mean the onset?
So like when do you start kind of seeing the behaviors becoming an issue? And so they may not meet the formal diagnostic criteria yet, but it's something to be aware of. Kind of similar to how oppositional defiant disorder is something that's a precursor to antisocial personality disorder. So like they have to be diagnosed with something similar like that in their youth before it can be applied as an adult. So it doesn't always happen, but you can still say, hey, there were some of these behaviors that fit into this criteria previously. So it's just kind of showing, because once you hit 18, that's when your personality and some of those more long-term behaviors become fixed and they become stay with you. Just like how you can't diagnose kids with personality disorders. You have to wait until they're adults, because then that's when you're starting to see more permanent patterns in behavior. Does that kind of explain that one?
Yeah.
Good question though. That one really trips me up a lot, because there's just so many pieces to it. And then the before, the after, the what, you know.
It just doesn't go into the trips. It doesn't go into like the controversy on oppositional defiant disorder, because that's like it's such a heavy label for a kid to carry, and also like how skewed it is towards certain demographics as well, that like it's just surprising to not see that information, especially because it happens in school.
Right.
Kids get diagnosed with that in school, so.
and they're labeled in that way to fit in with that you're a bad kid, right? And to help other and then put them into that box. And I think that the text too, it was very like clinical, basic by the books, and even the DSM, it kind of talks about some of those more finer like demographic information, but it's not really in the actual criteria for assessing and diagnosing. But I get what you're saying. I think it's an important note when you're talking about it, when you're learning about it, to just know those different, how people can use diagnoses. And that's with all diagnoses across the board. That's kind of the fear in general with labeling people, right? We don't want to put them in that box so they're that forever and then they become that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Just like one, it's a very general thing for me is just like having all this information is great, but especially when it comes to like assessments and diagnosis, like am I gonna end up at a school with like 2 psychologists and a speech pathologist and this and that, or am I gonna end up at a school where like I'm the only counselor and like the psychologist comes by once a week and just like there's still just so much gray area and like what on this do I need to like focus on for where I'm gonna end up being? Am I just gonna be like, yeah, like
what do you do with all of this information once you have it? And I mean, I would say just in my experience, just at least knowing the behaviors and being able to triage and prioritize that for however you do know you're gonna be able to speak with them, as terrible as that sounds, you may not be able to give the best care to every single kid you're working with, which just is probably one of the biggest difficulties of working in this profession for y'all. But I would say just focus on the most problematic or, you know, needing to intervene on behaviors. Problematic is a bad word.
I don't remember if it's in the book or not, because it's new to me, and also me and my practical, I presented it to my supervisor, and they had also never heard about it. But emotionally disturbed as a I don't know. I don't even know if it's a diagnosis or not, because it's something that like I was in my practicum when this happened, and they were trying to describe a kid as emotionally disturbed and constantly putting that label on him. And I was like, I had never heard about it, and then when I talked about my supervisor, they had also never heard about it, so I didn't know.
Yeah,
Like-
it's similar. I've never heard of that.
Oh, cool.
Ever. I do not think that's a diagnosis. Have you ever heard of that as a diagnosis?
So, from my understanding, there are classrooms that students will be classified as ED, and they're in specific classrooms for that. Again,
Getting
so
treated.
as school counselors, we do not, and yeah, I'll defer to my behavior specialist here, but as school counselors, we have to be very cautious in this area. We do not diagnose, nor do we suggest them. We can say certain behaviors that we are seeing, things such as that, but this is a very tricky area for us. And just to kind of speak to what Becky was saying, you know, this is good information for us to have from the professionals that do this. Again, taking it with that, you know, that people are looking at it through their different lens. Because I told y'all I had a student that was diagnosed with ADHD when he had all the symptoms of PTSD, and his grandmother burned a fire in front of him. But they, you know, maybe they didn't have all that information. And so we take this to work on providing our services. When I was in the program, we didn't have a lot of exposure to all of these different, and so when I would get these diagnoses from our professionals, and that would be a time for me to go on wonderful internet and try to find resources, not just, you know, for me in working with the students, but also for the teachers, because teachers are also, I mean, they have way less training in this area than we do, of course, right? And we just have maybe a chapter on all these different diagnoses, hopefully more infused throughout our other school counseling classes. We touch on some more. That's kind of how I would see to use it.
What was odd to me is like they had a social worker come to the school, and then like as soon as a social worker, which I don't know why the social worker was trying to diagnose or trying to like even think like for some reason.
If they're in the LCSW, then they can,
But then like they were the one that brought up ED as a diagnosis, and then like the school counselor latched onto it, and I was like, that's going on, but okay.
That seems like a tricky way to put somebody into a box, and I would definitely try to steer away from that. And like Dr. Bransfield said, just focus on the behaviors, focus on what is impacting them in the classroom.
Yeah, it comes in under, I think under IDEA is what it comes in under. So it's more of a special education classification than it is a mental health classification.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember being mentioned in a chapter in the consultation textbooks. Very briefly, like as a like stepping stone for other conduct disorders. Like you start there and then you go up. That was last semester, maybe. But
Yeah.
like,
I mean, there's a more empathetic way too to say that somebody's struggling with their emotions, right?
That label, exactly.
Yeah, and so I think that that could be, you know, something on y'all as well to kind of reframe that in a more empathetic and positive
Yeah,
way
like what else is
too.
going on that may be creating these versus
Yeah,
getting a label for that.
like the kid could be super traumatized for all we know, and that's exactly what's
Right.
happening, which is creating an emotional disturbance, absolutely. So just to summarize chapter 17, professional school counselors need to increase their knowledge of symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment of mental disorders to meet the needs of all students where they are, and additional training on special education procedures, section 504 regulations, diagnostic assessment, multiculturalism, and the ASCA national model will enhance the professional counselor's clinical knowledge and skills. And so other than that, what are some other ways that y'all can increase your knowledge, you know, apart from being in school, your clinical knowledge and skills of some of these things?
Read up on research.
There you go, that's a good
Good
one.
research.
Yes.
Or something like training, specific training that's
Continuing
offered.
education.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even just talking to people. I learned so much just from other counselors at my agency and just from other classmates.
Also, something, because I'm doing research for my supervision right now, but also clinical mental health has supervision that's required. Post-graduation, school counseling does not, which to me was alarming because there's studies that look into school counselors who didn't have supervision post-graduation and school counselor had supervision post-graduation because they chose to go get supervision, and like the competence and ambiguity in your role as a school counselor is a lot lower without the supervision. So it's strange that there isn't supervision required post-graduation.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. I love supervision. I mean, I'm kind of sad. I just finished 3 years of it, but it feels like therapy for therapy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I love supervision. My supervisor was great. She went through this program too. But yeah, so that's another great way. Any other ideas of ways that y'all can enhance your clinical knowledge or skills?
being involved in like advocacy groups
Yes.
for like people from these populations.
Absolutely, and just talking to them, just talking to the kids, getting to know them, what's going on. You start to see trends and things like that, and after a while, you do shockingly see things that are clinically significant, even though you don't realize it.
I think, I mean, it seems a little more benign, but volunteering,
Yeah.
you know, whether it's aftercare programs, if you have the time, just the more exposure you have to more kids and their parents or caregivers, I feel like it gives you a better perspective on just a lot of different. And it gives you experience dealing with different personalities, different mindsets.
And seeing how different families and different, even just different cultures, different families, different everything interact and solve conflict, that really speaks a lot to how the kid is going to be resolving conflict and struggling with that as well. All right. Anything else about chapter 17? All right. That's
Probably.
I know. Well, let me know if something comes up. It was a lot, and so I just kind of stuck with a kind of very basic summary of it. But there was a lot in there, so if y'all have any questions that you think of, please let me know. All right, so I've done a couple scenarios. This is a kind of smaller group. Do y'all just want to read it together and just kind of shout it out?
We're good at discussing.
I can see that already. All right, so scenario 1. A third grade teacher reports to you that their student Will has been struggling with outbursts in class and with students. Most recently, he hit another student during recess because he felt the other student disrespected him. The teacher reported that Will has had a couple of crying outbursts and has not been completing his homework assignments. When you first speak with him, he looks tired and says he hasn't been sleeping at night. As you continue speaking with him, he tells you that he's been having nightmares since his brother was shot while driving to work. So, Dr. Brasfield told about the different tier approaches that y'all use. So first, I was wondering what tier would this be?
I'd say tier 3 individual counseling.
Good job. Absolutely. Great work.
PTSD.
So what would you do?
Referring to our mental health facility we have in Memphis Shelby County Schools,
Oh, you have one of those?
all over the state. We have like 3 different locations now. We just opened up one at Cordova Middle.
Very cool.
So I refer to that.
So
We have
as far as,
social worker too.
like, that wouldn't be his full school day treatment, that would
It's
just be a
after school.
supplementary, yeah,
That's
so,
after school.
but
It's
how
open
can
to like
we
8.
best support him at school, because he's gonna struggle
Uh,
during the school
I've
hours
talked
too.
with teachers, you know,
when it
they'll
comes to
kind of
much
know.
confidentiality.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, kind of be vague, but let them know that he's going through some stuff. Definitely.
Yeah.
And we have a social worker that's there 4 days a week, so I would definitely refer him to him to meet with. I'm not sure exactly how they make their schedule, but I mean, he calls people down for sessions, so you know, that's where I would refer, you know, let the ball roll from there, and then he's someone I would just keep an eye on, keep on a list of check-ins, you know, just inform those guys, don't pull them in from random, you know, see them in the hallway, stuff like that. Yeah, just will, yeah.
As important as like homework and schoolwork is, like,
Parents.
I feel like it's not as important as the sleep, because like realistically anyone, adults, is not getting sleep at night, they're not going to be caring about those things because it's hard to function under that. So, because if he gets to be able to sleep at night, then that might, but eventually may not be a problem anymore. Now, the disrespecting thing might be his whole own thing, but like, I feel like the homework is like, of course you want to talk to him like, hey, you know, try to do your homework, it's important to do for school and everything, but it's not going to be on his mind if he's not sleeping.
For the family too, we have family counseling. I would assume they're obviously being affected too.
If his, like, parents approve of doing like some short-term counseling, we could meet once a week and talk about like breathing exercises and other age-appropriate coping mechanisms for when he's feeling overwhelmed.
I love that. Any other ones? Any other thoughts?
As far as the homework, like, yeah, I wasn't thinking, knowing what he's been through, like, it would be a big thing, but I think that would be an opportunity, like, as the counselor, that you could just bring him in the office and, like, and it not be so, like, sit him down, like, you know, crying, what's going on, blah, blah. You can, like, bring him in your office, like, well, I just noticed you haven't been turning your homework, and let that be an entryway to talk to him about and gain that relationship with him, and therefore he's doing his homework and you're getting to know him and know what's going on.
Absolutely. And you're kind of building that rapport to show that you care about him as a person, not about the assignments, right? You're not coming at it from a punitive lens. You're coming at it from, I really do want to help and collaborate with you. I think that's a really great approach to have, especially because, you know, he has been going through a lot. And you know how schools are too. People probably already know, really and truly. Like, we do want to respect his confidentiality, but most likely people already know what's going on. I did take this from a case where I had been working with, obviously the names are different and some of the details are different, but you know, the kids do have a hard time, especially after things like that happen in their families, because, you know, because of everything that's happening in the world. And we want to make sure that we're really giving them that grace and that space. I think that y'all are right. You touched on a lot of points. Like, the homework's not as important, but it is an indicator to the behaviors and the overall functioning that we're seeing. So we want to just make sure that we are creating a safe space. Any other things that we could be doing to help Orlo Will?
I guess one thing to bring it back to like tier 1 is we could talk to the other 3rd grade teachers and see how violent we are as like a grade on a playground. And maybe that's gonna be like what our guidance lessons are about, like anger management for 3rd grade.
I've been teaching a class in 6th grade at Memphis Academy of Science and Engineering. It's a new curriculum I developed. It's like a trauma and anxiety kind of thing. Basically, like, what is trauma, how to identify it, and how to cope with it. We go once a week to the school, and the kids are always like, I'm fighting, I'm gonna fight no matter what. Like, that is their instinct, that's what they want to do. And so we have to kind of show other positive pro-social ways to heal with that, or to deal with that feeling when it comes up. But yeah, absolutely, great points. Any other thoughts about Will? Before we go to our next scenario? Okay. All right, number 2. During the pandemic, several students in different grades lost primary caretakers. The teachers of these students are noticing them struggling with feelings of grief, specifically depression and other mood issues. The students began to act out individually and in groups, and many of the students were falling behind in classes. It's many students in different grades. What tier would this be?
Tier 2.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you address these students? What's y'all's game plan? Oh, I'm so sorry. I did have one more note. One more note about this one. I knew it. Y'all, I do this all the time. I'll start talking and then it's just like these thoughts fly around in my brain. Really try to rein them in. Will, is it possible for y'all to, I used to work at Youth Villages in the crisis response team as a suicide homicide risk counselor before moving into this new position I have. And a lot of the times I'd be working with kids who are experiencing emotional difficulties, and something we would talk about is like coming up with a code word for when they're feeling like distressed, so that they can tell the or their teacher like, hey, I need a couple minutes to just go outside and breathe. Is that something that would be appropriate in this situation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing they do now, they have iPads, they have a red screen. And you can like show like their red screen to the teacher, and it's some place that you use.
That's really
That's helpful for kids who have like communication
Yeah,
Non-verbal.
weaknesses.
absolutely.
Or they're just very, like my daughter's totally not nonverbal, but she is intimidated sometimes to have to speak to an adult if it's maybe not her teacher or substitute or.
Yeah. And then going back to that, like looking at the whole family, if historically the child hasn't been able to have a safe space to share their concerns or feelings, they may be more hesitant to say, hey, I need a couple minutes for mental health break, you know? Like back home, that would not be something that would be allowed. So normalizing that and modeling that and just saying like, hey, I need a few minutes is really crucial. But kind of staying on teachers too at the same time, because that was my experience as this counselor in this role, was that I would be talking to the student, the guidance counselor, but sometimes the teacher wasn't the one on board. So I do not envy you as a profession at all, having to navigate with all of these different roles and people.
Well, another thing for Will, like, let's say he's a bus driver and he gets there early, maybe find a safe place for him to take a nap. Maybe he'll save at school
Yeah.
and be able to sleep, maybe not, but sometimes for students, school is a safer place. But it's just, I've had many naps we won't think outside.
Well, and to your point about taking a, kind of gauging the level of violence or aggression on the recess playground scene, or when they have like more free time to express themselves, we could even do like a grade level lesson around, might be too old for third grade, but I know we did a lesson called Being a Turtle, and talking about like when you have feelings, like aggressive feelings that make you want to do something you know you're not supposed to do to a classmate, hit, throw, you know, that's your turtle time, and you need to find a safe place, which could already be designated in the classroom or with the school counselor, whatever, and you go be a turtle and you do your breathing exercises, and it could be a series of lessons to help equip kids who won't get those kind of skill sets from home. And they're also struggling with the trauma.
And we know that kids need emotional intelligence to be taught in schools. It's not something that anyone's like lining up to do, but I think that y'all have that, you know, unique opportunity to do exactly that, and that is beautiful. All right. So, sorry, back to scenario number 2. All right, anything with this, what would y'all do to address these students as a group? How would y'all help these poor babies?
Bibliotherapy.
Oh, yeah. Any
Honest,
specific
like-
books?
I don't know their specific grade levels, and all of mine are for adults right now, but I know how it can feel like having other people tell you it's all gonna be alright. So if it comes from like a book, sometimes it's a little more comforting, or at least it feels less like.
We've got a lot of really good kids books at our office that they break down some really hard, heavy topics, and it does feel more palatable. And it makes me cry every time, not gonna lie, because I'm just like, where were these things when we were little, you know?
Well, it's like, I know a human wrote it, but like
Right.
somehow just me reading it feels different than like a human person saying it.
Exactly, absolutely. It's just like when I teach this curriculum I was just talking about, I talk about how unhelpful it is to be told to calm down. And we all know, like I'm upset, I need that minute to just process it. So if I get it from a book, that's my choice. I have the ability to read for myself. All right, so bibliotherapy, how else would you address these students? Let's just say they're in grades 3, 6, and 7.
I think you have to group by age. I would do small group sessions or meetings by general age, because the development levels are so different.
Yeah, you could do one for the third graders and then another one for the 6th and 7th, because they're around the same age. Also depends on how many you have, because you also don't want group to be too big, because generally you're supposed to keep it at 10, but you know, you're in a school.
You know how that goes. When are you gonna find the time and the space and all of that? So, yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be a really good way. What would you do in those small groups? What would you talk about?
I lean towards art when I see feelings, grief, and the need for expression. I like art, even across all of those age levels. I just feel like it gives them, you could do a structured expression kind of lesson with art where you could let them freestyle paint and talk through why that color or what does that represent. And it could spark other kids who are maybe struggling with the same types of feelings because they're all kind of in the same situation, same age. It just kind of encourages a well-rounded discussion and helps pull people out who wouldn't want to volunteer with their feeling or thinking.
Like normalizing it because it's already in that group setting, so it's not as scary.
For the third graders could also some form of directive, or maybe not directed play therapy, but probably at that age probably directed play therapy. Or just using some form of play to just see where they're at.
Yeah.
And then just like, and generally just if I'm running a group, I'm steering away from saying it's gonna be okay and like no one wants to hear that.
Right, we don't.
And sometimes it won't be okay.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
things, we have to find a way to make a different way to find okay.
And like also just avoiding like avoiding all those types of phrases, you know, like regardless of whether you're Christian or not, no one wants to hear like, yeah, they're in a better place or any of that because one, you're assuming if you don't know the kid's religion or anything,
I mean, unless you're at like a Christian school.
right?
Or if the kid.
Or even then.
Yeah, but even then, when it's so sudden, you know, I worked with so many people that have lost somebody to homicide, and even then, like, I will never say the words I understand. I will never say they're in a better place. I will never say that this was God's plan. Like, I personally am not religious, but I mean, these clients, they don't feel solace in that. It makes them feel like they're not allowed to feel those feelings in that moment. And so we don't want, you know, people do that to make themselves feel better. That makes me feel better. Like, I'm a good person, look at me, wishing my condolences. I mean, there's more to it than that. People are, I guess, good, right?
I think it also comes from a place of not knowing what to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting at. People say it because it makes them feel better in that moment. Like, I'm doing something, even though I can't take away this pain. And so sometimes I'll just say that. Like, I don't understand what it's like to go through what you're going through, but I'm here to help you. What can I do to support you right now? What do you need in this moment? Is that a nap? Is that a snack? Is that 5 minutes?
Yeah, my good friend, and she was an adult, but she lost her sister, and they were both adults at the time. It was sudden and tragic, and she was like beside herself. And I was trying to think of I feel like I'm the closest people to me about helping and having the right words to say. Because I was even nervous. Like, I pulled into her driveway. I was like, what do I say to her? What do I do? I've known her since second grade. And so I walked in. I just didn't say anything. And she was like, I just want you to sit with me.
Yeah.
I mean, she just wanted me on the couch, like with her.
You just gotta sit with
I
it.
was like, okay, I can do this. You know? So everybody's different,
They really are.
especially immediately.
Right. And so it takes a special person to kind of know what steps to take, what to say. And sometimes that's just not saying anything. You're saying, I'm here for you.
I think with kids, they just need to know that they have someone, even if they don't want to talk right now, they don't want to be talked to have a place where they know they can, when they're ready, like when they get to the point where they have a feeling. Sometimes they don't know what feeling they have.
Yeah.
If it's sudden or.
In that case with Will, I was actually going to his school twice a month, and I would just, the first like month, 2 months, I would say, we just sat there coloring like pictures of Jordans that I had printed out. Like, I brought like pictures of like the shoes, and we would just like color them, and that's all we did for the first like month, 2 months. Just like growing that rapport, getting that relationship, showing that I'm here. Like, we don't have to talk about anything yet. I'm just here for you. Great work so far. Everyone's doing such a good job discussing. All right, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how all of this impacts us. Who knows what vicarious trauma is? It's on the board, so that's good. If you don't, you can read it. All right, so vicarious trauma is also called the cost of caring, also known as secondary traumatic stress, secondary trauma. It can be described as indirect exposure to a traumatic event through first-hand account or in a narrative of that event. I'm very open with this. I talk about it all the time in my doc program. I got some serious vicarious trauma from some of the things that I have heard, and I even went to an EAP provider like through my work, and I was like, all right, this is what I want to talk about, and she was like, no, can't do it. So like, sometimes certain things are a lot, and there's a reason that it impacts us, and there's a reason that it affects us, is because we are doing our best to be empathetic in that moment and to put ourselves in those kids' shoes to say, I don't know what it's like to know what you're going through, but I'm going to do my best to understand how you're feeling right now, and that can weigh on us. hearing about their trauma, hearing about what they go through, just hearing about the mental and emotional disorders that they may have and how they're treated can create emotional responses in yourself.
Okay, so if your EAP person said no, did they
Yeah.
give you other resources? That's very concerning to me.
No, and she was licensed too, like through Baptist. Like she was like legit, more so than I was at the time. Like I didn't have a license yet. And I specifically was like, this one case has been really weighing on me, and it was a brutal one where a mother and her daughter had been murdered, and like my clients had found them, and I was just really struggling with a lot of graphic details. And so that's what I said, and she goes, I'm not the person for that, and there's no one else here that can do like that level of trauma. And so I've had clients tell me that in the past, like they try to go to EAP providers, and then they would say homicide, and they're like, I can't do that. And
So I think them not wanting to do any harm because they're not, whether they're certified and licensed, they're not qualified in some way, maybe they have their own, but they should have referred you to someone.
Yeah,
They should have a list of,
well, and if it's an EAP, then it should be able to cover things, in my opinion, that are you're exposed to in your work. And
right, it's through my work.
any of us in our helping fields can, I mean, well, anyone can be exposed to trauma at any point, of course. I mean, just turn on the news.
Yeah,
But
right.
seriously,
I will
that's
say,
concerning. I'm
you
sorry that
struggle.
happened.
It's okay. I found someone else through my insurance and ended up doing that, but yeah.
They say no one in the facility is ready to deal with homicide, and we're standing in the city of Memphis.
You'd be surprised though. I mean, you really would. Like intense. People will say they're trauma certified or can handle trauma, but they're just not that, I guess.
Because I got certified, but then I had like 5 clients, and I figured out that it doesn't matter if I'm certified.
Right.
Well, that's what you have to think about. I'm sorry,
Mm,
but I'm
good.
just like boggled by this. And you have to think about that as school counselors, is because this is from someone who is licensed in the mental health field that was telling you that, and then I mean, you're gonna hear some stuff, you know, coming from kiddos, and there's not. I mean, we can do some referrals. We can. It depends on. You know, we're asking earlier about who else you have. It depends on the school. I mean, I didn't have social workers. The school psychologist was only for testing and like emergency reasons where I felt like I wasn't the best person to counsel that child. But otherwise, it's you.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
So I feel like this is a very important thing, like especially when it comes to middle school and high school kids, because I tell my students, like when I was working at Whitehaven High, like you can watch something on social media and be messed up from it. Like you don't have to watch.
Like those, like there's beheading videos.
Yeah.
And it's like,
you don't, and it's so freely now. Like I know Facebook has like just the, you know, they tell you like this video has values, but to click here, you know,
Right.
to watch it.
You can still watch it.
So like I tell them like you can see something and be even though it's not you, like you can see something and be messed up from it. Like I don't let, I'm at the point now where like I don't let my friends like dump stuff on me.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when the murder of the, I forgot his name, but you know, about the police officers and you know, like when those situations happen, like don't share those videos with me. I don't want to talk about it. Like, you know, I would talk about it like on the border, but like I know how I feel, you know, about things like that. And, you know, especially when it comes to, you know, a culture of, you know, I just say black people that deal with things like this all the time. And that, you know, I was on social media and like they had this thing, they were sharing this thing and they were like, if the police ever pulled the gun on you, you know, share this. And like everyone that shared it was African American or Hispanic. And I was just like, you know, and when you see things like that, even though you have that thought, it kind of makes it concrete in your mind. So like I'm going through days just thinking about this and like really distracted because I'm like, well, you know, like what can I do? Or like, you know, or like this is the life I've been living and it's been so normal to me that I never realized that it was this. So when now that people are talking about it and I'm seeing it, it's like now I'm living in it and it's hard.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be, it almost normalizes it, right? Especially when you're talking about kids. Like then that's what they think is what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to act like, and what's normal.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not. We don't have to live with this much trauma all the time.
Right.
We don't have to live in environments that are just full of such things like poverty and discrimination that lead to crime. Yeah, it's a lot. It is. So we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. It's even more important. Like, because we can't do this kind of work and be good also at the same time if we're putting our best into it. That makes sense. Like it kind of moved me towards the end of the day, but it's a lot. Did you happen to bring the pro ball? It's okay.
I was gonna forget
It's okay.
something.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
gonna print it right now.
Are you sure? Because
Yeah.
I was just gonna. I have it on the screen. I can just pull it up and they can write the answers down.
Learn how to self-score it, so that'll
Okay.
be fun. So let me
Okay.
go real quick.
Yeah, we're doing a phonical assessment.
Time zone is set.
I almost brought it.
Yes,
And I was like,
yes.
yay. So yeah,
Burnout skill.
yeah, that is essentially. So yeah, do y'all have practicums right now? Everybody in a practicum site, or most of y'all?
I work for the school district.
Okay.
Doing well.
So do y'all work with kids currently in a way that you could potentially feel burnout and rate yourselves on burnout?
Very much so.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I knew some of y'all would have some experiences.
I'm in the school.
For me, it's less of what I'm doing and more of
Mm.
how little time with how many kids I have. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I really can't.
I'm not a wrestler, but, had to like, what they say, tag out, tap out,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
with my husband a few times, with our second grader. Just because I can feel, I'm not the right person to deal with her. With this.
That awareness.
And my good friend is a
Battle.
single mom, and I'll call her, I'm like, how do you do
I think because we don't have a choice.
Right,
Like, I gotta-
right.
But I mean, you have to step out and just call, like, because there's a lot of times he's not there because he works a lot of nights,
Yeah.
but, so I get it, but then it's mostly nights, so it's not as much stuff,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah, like I tell my friends like all the time, like they have partners or husbands or whatever, and I tell them like it's okay to leave your child with the father, you know, like.
Right.
But it's so like,
your mental health is important.
yeah, it's like you can, you know, if your child is having, you know, some issues or she's crying because you said she couldn't have ice cream, and like I don't know, like I don't want to make it like a gender thing. But just like a lot of my friends, like if our kids are crying, it really affects us. Whereas it's like our husbands or partners, like the child's crying and he's just like, okay.
It's
you
kind of
know.
an innate thing, I think,
Yeah.
with moms in some way, like there's, just like when you're
Socialization
newborns
thing,
and you
too.
hear a baby cry, you're like, oh, like if you're in the store and you hear a baby cry,
Yeah.
you have the baby at home,
Yeah.
it literally like had a physical response for me. I'd be like,
Oh.
can I hold the baby? Can I help? Like,
Yeah.
how can I help? I don't want her to cry, you know, and it wouldn't phase
Yeah.
my husband.
I feel like even in situations where like the husband was the stay-at-home parent
Yeah.
and the mom was the one working, then the
Yes.
one who stays at home would be the one having that reaction.
Yeah,
Right.
more often too.
Mhm.
And personalities are different too. I guess sometimes I have this guilt because I'm like, I will say, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how to handle her situation. I know what's happening.
Mhm.
I know what's going on with her. But I struggle the most to get rid of her.
Yeah.
And it's like a mom guilt thing, I guess, slash
They
professional.
know we have that. So like we'll be thinking about it, like we'll think about exactly what we said, how we said it, if we could have said it better. You know, like, and I think kids know what parent that is. You know, and you know, cause they with you every day, they know how you feel. And sometimes they use that to their advantage. A lot of times.
Kids are smart.
Yeah.
Kids are smart.
So with vicarious trauma, especially if you're working in like a more rural area, this would be something you'd want to watch out for like kids who have siblings who are also going through the same school system. Like if you know one kid has a trauma that could have also been something that their siblings are hearing about, then you may want to watch out for this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about it more from like you as a provider standpoint, but yeah, definitely other people in the family could have responses to someone else in the family's trauma, especially if they witnessed it. Like going back to the example of Will, like what if he had been there and saw his brother get shot? He would definitely have vicarious or secondhand trauma.
Yeah, and what if like just Will also had other siblings who like even though they didn't witness it, Will told them about what he witnessed, like
Yeah.
that would also
Yes.
be.
Yeah, especially like we just never know what's gonna happen in different situations, but you never know how trauma's gonna affect somebody anyway. So I mean, he could have had to be there in it doing stuff, or he could have just been watching, listening. Either way, it could bring up a trauma response, but that could definitely impact his other siblings as well, hearing about that.
husband's a sheriff's deputy, one of the good ones. And over the years, like, it's bothered me because he's never ever talked about anything he's seen at work. He's seen women involved in
Yeah.
bad scenes that he's come up to me. Bad stuff that you don't think you ever want to hear about happening to human beings, whether it's car wrecks or, and he had the same experience with it because they have resources, people they're supposed to talk to. And it took some years for him to be willing to, but then it was like crash and burn.
Yeah.
And so now, the perception of mental health help in those situations is like, why?
Right.
You know?
What's it gonna do? I
So we
ended up,
struggle with this conversation because I'm like, maybe I should open myself up to hearing things to let him get it out.
And that's
Since
also
I
the
know
other
I can't
issue.
handle it.
Yeah.
Like I could never do that job. Never. I would be
yeah.
away.
Yeah, my mom's boyfriend is a Memphis cop and he worked in like the medical whatever spot and like he would like see so many things and like I was only getting like a small fraction of like what he
That's
saw
one of the
on
reasons
the
he doesn't
daily.
talk to them or
And
things
it's
or
like,
anything.
I can
But-
imagine. Any of them, the firefighters too. I mean,
Mhm.
just the things that people have to see and hear and deal with really does impact them, especially when it is work stuff. I ended up finding a therapist who specialized in like EMDR stuff, and that was what helped me because I'm also EMDR trained. So I was like, if they're trained, certified, whatever to do it. Yeah, it was somebody
Private
there.
practice?
Health and Enrichment Center. They're all
Okay, yeah.
EMDR trained there.
Okay.
All their stuff.
So take a test.
Yes. So y'all do this, and we will talk about scoring it afterwards.
And, there's a way to do it online, but I haven't played with it yet.
I haven't either.
Sometimes those are,
I only have one
Back
pencil.
to it.
I only have one pencil, but I have like a million pens.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I really should
Do you
have
want
brought
your
it.
pen?
No, I told you I was going to, and I forgot. I'll do something right then, I'll write it down, it doesn't matter, there's another pink
I'm
one.
gonna say, maybe.
You could, yeah, you have to score it.
Oh.
You have to, so just, yeah, read the directions. This is how frequently you've experienced this in the last 30 days. 30,
Yeah,
First
last 30
30
days.
days. There's still 3 jelly donuts left, people. So, I'll close this. Save myself.
Can't you help your daughter?
Yeah, she needs that at 8 o'clock at night.
Cause every time like
You need to space out, if you could make this nice and private.
I get
I know my answer.
Do you need a pencil or anything, anyone?
No.
Okay. And if you don't wanna do it, that's okay.
Yeah, you don't have
If this
to.
is, something that is difficult right now, or just period, or don't really want to reflect, that's okay, this is completely optional.
Yep, just to talk about how stress and stuff impact us.
I was telling Rebecca I'm not getting assessments because I'm like, it says, am I happy? I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, I
Just
just.
go and land it.
Right, it depends on the weather, it changes day to day, I'm the same way.
Just answer generally.
I'm an empath.
I feel like we actually put this in assessment.
You might.
So I like to do that, I've done this before, I worked with, basically on what you probably do is I was a debriefing counselor for several years for, Carl Perkins Exchange Club Center. What they do is they work with people that are reported to experience abuse, all the way from the first people that see the child, all the way through to the attorney that does the prosecution. And so every other month, we would get together and I would do some sort of like, it's mostly self-care. You know, we'd have a discussion about it, and then we'd have a check. We just help them keep a check on where they were to see if they needed to self-reflect, and if there's anything they could do at that point to help with these areas.
Yeah,
Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, because of things that are going on.
exactly.
And if that's at the point, we have to think about what kind of supports we can need, or what kind of things do we maybe not need to be doing.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
can also use these with other occupations. I'm sorry, I'm just talking. Really uncomfortable silence, but, so where it says help, you can plug in something like teach, or like you can adapt these for any field.
So I was saying too, like motherhood, parenting, you can put that in there too, any of them.
Can I ask about a random thing that I'm thinking of? Like volunteering for like clubs and coaching sport teams, like as a school counselor, would they rather you like not do it because it might like make the lines like blurry for the children, or like I mean like I played volleyball in high school, so it's like the school I end up at needs a volleyball coach.
They love people to do coaching.
Yeah.
You just have to be cautious
The more
and
you can
be
do, the better.
cognizant of that.
So like.
But man, just don't overcommit.
I figured in that sense, like maybe if like they need like a freshman coach and I like always work with seniors, that might be really good because then they would like remember me when they get to me. I just didn't know how like those like I know like parking lot duty, lunch duty is like one thing where you get to interact with the kids and you're like still a counselor, but taking on those roles where you're like not a counselor at all.
You have to be cognizant of that, making sure that your lines aren't getting blurred. And be very aware of that, I would say.
And I would say you still would be a counselor.
Yeah, you can't get rid of that.
Yeah, so that
You
like
can't get rid of that, but you need to make sure the
Oh,
students at that
yeah.
point
Like, I
know
don't
your
need-
limitations on different things, just like you would when you were a counselor.
Well, I remember like in high school, I had a good friend who, she lost her mom in 8th grade, and her dad remarried her mom's best friend, who became a step monster. Like, it was a terrible situation for her and her siblings. And they were all middle school and older at that point, so it was also a terrible time of their life. It was a good time. But they needed that support as teenagers from their father, and he was like absent. And she wasn't comfortable with any of our school counselors. She always talked to our softball.
Oh,
coach.
yeah.
Yeah. He was a male. He was kind of fatherly. I mean, he was a dad too. And it was like you'd see them over before practice, before you got started, and he's the one who helped her through a ton of stuff. So
Yeah, we talked about that, how the whole school as part of this program can be mentors and things
you
such
should
as that.
still use your counseling skills, coaching for sure.
I just didn't know if there was like a certain ethical.
Only just making sure about your dual roles can be issues and things such as that, but it's
Especially in a school environment.
It's just, I mean, I've had roles where I was someone's friend, coworker, and her child's counselor. And you have to have some awareness around that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
I would think it would be a lot
I'm
just to
pretty
be
good
able
with
to always
My family calls me the vault. So like,
Yeah,
I am like
yeah.
the holder of the secrets.
Yeah. It's an interesting place to be, and it's especially in our rural, like small districts, small towns, things like that, where there's just not that many options. Okay, so y'all already flipped to the last page.
Yeah,
Talked
y'all-
about scoring over there.
Y'all know how to score it. If you
It's pretty
look at the,
self-explanatory.
I was about to say, if you look at the last page, it's got our scoring here, and it actually breaks down compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. So it's pretty straightforward, but you go through and look at the specific number items of what you scored and put that in. And it'll give you those specific ones in compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress.
The only one that's odd is burnout. You see you write down your score, then you flip it, it's a reverse scoring.
There's a little chart there, so
Yeah,
if you put
it
like
shows you right there what to
two,
put.
And where it's supposed to have a one is blank. but
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to have a one.
Yeah, they've updated it. You know, whenever they update something, something's gonna be messed up on it.
It does.
So yeah, if you wrote, thank you, if you wrote 1, you need to change it to 5.
Y'all let me know if you have any questions.
People
about
never,
that.
whenever they update stuff, they never get the full edits.
No, you
So
always
I
forget
read
something.
pricing it out like 4 times, and after it goes, I'm like, you saw the word.
Yeah, all the time, all the time. Especially when it's like to everyone in the agency. I'm like, come on, I'm so sorry.
I just said something that's fun for the whole college, and I'm like, please look.
Or you forget to attach your attachment, even though it
I do
asks
that
you
all
now.
the time.
It even asks, and I'm still like, yeah, whatever, cool. It's looked dangerously.
It's always something important too, like, hello, you will find da da da, and then I get the email. Oh, I didn't see anything.
Exactly.
What's the score on that one?
Let's see, let's
Will I find out?
They explain it in this thing and say like, it works better to measure it in a positive way.
Okay.
It's about the way they're asking
It's a
it.
statistics thing.
Yeah, so like number one is I'm happy, so if you're putting a 5 on it, then you flip it around for your burnout would be a 1 to be never, so it makes it lower.
Oh, they posed the question about
Right, to get a better response.
It's also like, people are probably just more likely to be honest about like how happy they are versus how unhappy they are.
Right, exactly.
So.
Alright, I'll give you a couple more minutes to finish calculating. I'm not gonna make anybody share their answers, but I will go ahead and just share mine with y'all, because I'm an open book and I don't care about sharing them. My compassion satisfaction, I love my job, it's really difficult and emotionally difficult. I will share with y'all that I was experiencing a lot of this like secondary traumatic stress to the point that I switched to this new job that I have, and so I'm doing more like community engagement, community outreach. I do have a few clients I see still, but this helps me to thrive and to live. Yeah, so I was able, it was just so much hearing everything and doing everything individually with groups, or with clients and with groups too. So that's one of the reasons that I switched my job. And so my thing actually shows me that I'm really kind of surprised, because I took this last year and it was not the same. On my compassion satisfaction, I have like a 52. Like, I love my job. It's very high. Burnout scale for me was pretty low, only at like a 26. So that's pretty solid for me, considering where it was last time I did this. And then my secondary traumatic stress, still kind of problematic at like 40, but I'm working on it. Actively doing EMDR on it. So there we go, you know? Any questions about vicarious trauma, secondary stress, all of that fun stuff? All right, then we're gonna move into one of my favorite topics, which is self-care. How many of y'all have really solid self-care strategies? Okay, good. When I was in grad school, my background's forensic psychology, and in my master's program, I would be like, what is self-care? Like, I truly didn't understand. Like, we would write papers on it, I still didn't know, like, my self-care is still just turning my phone on Do Not Disturb and watching Netflix for hours and hours and hours until my dogs make me kick them outside. That's what I do, and I felt like that was guilt. Like, I feel bad about it. Like, I would really beat myself up, like, come on, you can do better than this, but that kind of leads to the burnout, you know? So when I was in school, I didn't really know what self-care was. What do y'all do for self-care? Y'all raise your hands.
I do meditation and I chant. And I have no days where I tell my kids no. The answer is no. When I ask me, the answer is no. So, like, they know, like, if it's something that they need or something like that. But I feel like I used to feel so guilty when I couldn't do something like take my kids to a football game or, you know, whatever. And then, like, I would have to realize, like, there are a lot of people in my community, they're not like me, they're not single mothers, they can do whatever it is that they need to do. So I had to really stop feeling guilty about that, and so like, that was like last semester, when we had, what class did we have?
Foundation.
Yeah, foundation, and
I'd
she
say
talking
you-
about self-care.
Yeah, you took a whole trip to Vegas.
Yeah,
You just
and I
hopped
did
on a
that.
Spirit flight.
And I
Yes, you
still
did.
went.
Yes, you did. And I was like,
Cause
let
I mean,
me
like,
look up these flights.
I had to, you know, you know, in the class, I realized that I internalized that strong black woman thing. And I just felt guilty if I did anything. Like, I went years without literally buying myself anything that, like, I felt like was not reasonable. Like, a handbag or, you know, just stuff like that.
need.
Right. Or like even my clothes, like I would go out and buy my kids clothes from like Dillard's and, but like I would shop at Walmart, which is nothing wrong with shopping at Walmart, but I'm saying like I would just be like, you know. Yeah. But like you don't need it, so like if I saw something at Dillard's I wanted, I wouldn't get it because I would feel guilty. So like last semester I just got out of office, like,
Because I love it.
yeah.
Sorry, I was talking your cohort.
Oh, were you? I know, they're literally right next door. I just heard one of them bang, I was about to be like, knock him back. No, that's a really good way to do that, because we're so hard on ourselves and we hold ourselves to such high standards, and I'm sure when you're a parent, it's a million times harder, and, you know, to internalize all of that. But you can do those things for yourself, you deserve nice things too. So I'm glad you're able to do
It
that.
starts with like giving yourself permission, because we're kind of in the same way with the working mom thing. And
Yeah.
I felt guilty giving myself permission to take any kind of break.
Yeah.
And so for me, it ranges from, sometimes it's just a bath, like the bathroom door is locked, and for 45 minutes, I'm taking a bath. I'm reading, I might be playing a game, I might be sleeping.
Come at you.
Usually I have a glass of
Yeah.
Right.
That's not, if the bathroom door closes, they're like,
If it's
what?
locked, quit.
Excuse me.
But I had to, I mean, it took, so sometimes it's a bath, sometimes it's a walk for me. Walking, I found like, not necessarily getting my heart rate up walking, but just walking to go to bed. Even if I find myself gazing off at a tree, I'm gonna notice that tree, like you just feel lighter. And then I also, recently, I kind of flipped out on my husband about like 5,000 different things going on, and I came home thinking he had accomplished a couple of things at the house and looked the same, and I went, I'm not saying you don't do anything. It was just kind of one of those, and he went, just tell me what you need me to do, and I was like, I'm just tired. I'm tired, you know, I'm sure my
Sorry, I'm not
face looked
laughing.
kind of monstrous.
Yeah.
And so it was things like that. He
Honest.
goes, is there a day of the week where you could arrange your schedule to where you can come home and take a nap? And I was like, you're great. And I'm like, and I haven't slept yet, but I've done that twice. Like before my kids are out of school, my work day's not over, but I've just like shot home and just, I'm the only one there. And it's just helped clear my head.
I'm a huge advocate for naps.
Me too.
We should do National Nap Time.
Agreed.
I'm so bad at naps.
I should go back.
Siestas, like I cannot understand why we don't do that.
I actually have a hate relationship with sleep. That is 8 hours of my day I'm doing nothing.
But it
we
was
need
all, I
that.
think it was all about
That's
permission,
important.
like I had to
Yes.
understand, it's okay to like give myself a break.
Yeah.
Cause I was kinda like her, get the kids everywhere, buy the kids whatever they need, get them all the stuff at school, you know, do all the things, and also saying no to people that I don't like saying no to, but I just, there's only so many hours during the day, and like, yes, I could help her do that, or I could volunteer to help with that committee, but I really don't have time, and what would it take away? So being a little bit selfish is okay when it comes to.
Yeah, no is a complete sentence, and you're allowed to take time for yourself. So I mean, my work, I love my job. I've already talked about it too much probably, but we get intentional self-care time. So each
That's nice.
week we get 1 hour, and you're allowed to take it with lunch. So like one day a week, I leave at 2 p.m. and I go straight to, okay, obviously to the park to walk. That's what I like to do, but sometimes I end up on the couch watching Netflix, and that's okay too. Because that's what it took me the longest time, exactly what y'all are saying. Like, it's about allowing yourself that and being intentional. And I would beat myself up, even though I don't have kids, I just have dogs, be like, I need to be doing this, need to be doing that. No, what? No, I need to sit here and not think about anything and just turn my brain off for a minute and just laugh at stupid stuff.
And my mother-in-law actually helped me when my kids were kind of like toddler, a lot younger, where they really did need my help more. And if she came by, she worked for the post office her whole career. She just retired like 4 years ago. But she didn't go to work until my husband was like 10. So when her babies were at home, she was doing everything in the house. And she was like, know, and see everything like a tornado hit. And the further away I get from that whirlwind time when they're little, I'm like, she is so right. If my daughter wants to get like, she's a runner, I'm not, but she's like, can we go on an exercise walk? That's what she call it. Like, Mom, I need you to get your heart rate up. We're not just strolling here. I'm like, yes, I can. I can like not do this housework on Saturday and I can go take a walk, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, but it feels scary because we have to give ourselves that permission, you know, we have to allow ourselves that it's okay to do that.
For me, it's weird because I have a weird relationship with like maximizing my time in it.
I
Because
understand that.
because the same things I do for self-care is the same stuff that I try to maximize my time on, like working out 6 days a week.
Being efficient.
Do what now?
Being efficient.
Yeah, being efficient.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I got into songwriting on guitar, and then now I'm like, all right, I have to write 2 or 3 songs a week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's wrong with
So
me?
then it's like super goal directed
Yeah.
instead of just being like, I just want to relax. I'm the same way with plants. I got really into plants during the pandemic to like for my mental health or whatever, and now I've got 75 houseplants that need so much attention.
Oh,
and
wow.
time.
And they grow.
Well, we talked about plants, you know,
Yeah,
I have
we
all these
did.
animals named after plants, and I'm a child first.
You probably have really good hair in your house.
That's what they say. I've got a whole room. I've got a whole room of them, and I was at like 120 at one point. Like I seriously cut back. A lot died because once I was back in work, I couldn't do it, and I was like, oh shit, Maggie, like this is your like sign, like to take a step back and take a break, because it was like it became a chore almost. Like it wasn't like just for me. It was like, oh, something else I have to take care of, something else I have to do. But I love doing it,
Goodness,
and I put
That's
too much
more work
pressure on
than my
myself.
14-year-old, honestly.
A lot.
Seriously,
And then
she can get her own food.
Right, exactly. No, I have to feed these guys.
That's why I
Special
put
soil.
my
How
milk
much,
maintenance.
how much water do you give the plant?
It just depends.
Depends on the plant.
Depends
My
on
one's only needs
So-
watered like twice, like once every
I
2
have
weeks.
2 plants that were given to me a month ago, and I don't know why these people brought me these plants.
So the biggest thing with houseplants, I would say, is just make sure that the water can come out the bottom. You always want the
Yeah.
big to be in a pot that can drain.
I've been giving them a quarter cup of water.
I would do a
I
little bit
need-
more than
I
that.
need a measurement.
Yeah,
Whatever
it's
kind of
hard.
plant they are, and just
Or like,
I like
you
the
just
ones
get
that
a
drip when they-
I don't know what
Yes,
they are,
I
what
need to
label.
know. I just take a literal like watering can is what I have like from like they have them at the dollar store even, and just like half of that for one plant, and I would just pour it until it comes through the bottom. You want the water to drain out the bottom of
Do
it.
you ever
That
use those
explains
glass
how
water
they
globes
I'll
that you
give
like
them more
stick
water.
in and they kind
Yes.
of drink themselves?
I have one. I've never actually used it though. Isn't that weird?
It works
I just
well
put it
for
in
me
there and it's
for a
pretty.
minute.
Did it? I've read mixed reviews honestly. Like sometimes
I
they can
forget.
keep it too wet. Oh, okay.
I
See,
do that.
that's how
Well,
I am.
empty.
I have to do it by sight too. Like a lot of my plants, I can see when they need water, and so that's where I'm like
or just
visually.
feel the soil.
Yeah, but I had an app for a while, and it was like super intense. It was like give me reminders, and I was at work, like at the office. I was like, no. Like,
They were
Name
fun when
them.
you're
You have to name them.
When
I
your
did.
self-care stuff becomes like stressful,
And
because
so,
you're too into it.
One of my coworkers was like, Maggie, you don't need something that you're doing more taking care of. Like your self-care needs to be, she does golf. She was like, I golf. I was like, okay, that's
doesn't
very
sound-
cool.
I like it.
I like
Golf
to
is
walk.
fun.
Golf can be fun,
It's
sure.
frustrating to me.
But it's definitely not care. It was a good point still.
Okay.
All right, so one thing I wanted to just like leave with y'all is self-compassion and self-care. So being nice to yourself. This is a really interesting article that I linked at the end that I read that I was just really impressed with. But just being nice to yourself is self-care, right? So would you talk to yourself the way you talk to a friend? Probably not. Like I'm a lot nicer to my friends than I am myself. Like I will beat myself up and be like, why did you say that? Why did you do that? No, because I'm a human. Another thing this article talks about with self-compassion and self-care is common humanity instead of isolation. So recognizing that we struggle and we suffer because that's the human experience, which, yeah, it's a little like meta or whatever, but it's also real. Like our pain, failures, and everything that we struggle with is a part of being a human being. And so sometimes we are in all of this together and we're all in this muddy, I was gonna say shit, but I already said it once, so like why worry about saying it again? Excuse my language. And just being mindful, mindfulness instead of over-identification with painful thoughts and emotions. So just observing those thoughts as they come through. One of my favorite mindfulness activities is just to sit there and like, y'all remember like back in the day when they would sell like movies and like sorry, that sounds so old.
Blockbuster.
CDs like on TV,
I
you
was
know?
thinking DVDs. Why
Yeah, any of those like the CDs and stuff on TV where they have like the song titles that come up and like
Oh, yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
they play it and like one's in yellow that they're playing. I know that sounds so weird. But that's what my mindfulness practice is. It's like the screen of all my anxious thoughts coming up, and when they're yellow, that's like what we're looking at, and then it's white again and it's gone right off the screen. My therapist told me about to do it like clouds coming through, like observe the thought come in and just watch it go away. But I
hold
like
it in and let it go.
Yeah.
They
or like
goosebumps
credits,
it.
you know, like credits on a screen. Like here it is, it's gone. And so just being mindful, just watching your thoughts and observing it, and just showing yourself compassion and self-care. Pretty much. That's what I wanted to leave with y'all. But I think, yeah, there was this too. Any feelings about this red, yellow, green, like kind of assignment?
Well, I just want to think about it. Literally,
Okay.
I just want you to be thoughtful and aware of it. Because, like,
Yeah.
you know, when you call that person an EAP that should be able to address anything, obviously we know they're red card, right? And so maybe you need some professional development, extra training in that area. And, you know, I think that was, mine was that I kept having so many students that were losing a close caregiver, and that's what got me back to the doc program.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to make sure I was doing everything I could, you know, to help them. You know, sexual abuse was another one that I felt like it was a difficult one when I first started out. Knowing how much to ask and not to ask too much because you don't want to muddy it. We've talked about that some. To just give y'all some of mine. I mean, divorce was easy for me because my parents have been divorced, so that was an you know. But again, I didn't want to. You want to make sure you don't over-identify with it, right?
And see,
So
my
you've got-
divorce is red for me because my parents' divorce was horrible.
Right,
And
and
I
so
can't
it
do
depends
anything with
on it.
couples.
Yeah, and so for me, it was like, oh, whatever. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
thought it's good to talk, but at the same time, I don't want to be like, you know, you gotta be careful about that. Whenever you're having something, you don't want to, you gotta watch your,
Boundaries.
yeah.
Your own experience.
And then, like, let's see, what were some, I can't think of yellow. I think mine were pretty much either one or the other.
Yeah, mine are definitely one or the
But
other.
you know, sometimes people will come through and they go, I don't have any red. And I'm like, you don't have any red. I don't know that you're really self-reflecting on that anymore. Because we've all got some things that are gonna be a little bit harder.
When you say yellow, like for me, I think, and it may not be yellow, I don't know if this is off, but for me, just because this has happened a lot with my kids, even the past just 2 years of school, kids coming in from many other countries with very broken language, and they're trying to acclimate, they seem to be just kind of thrown into a classroom with the same age kid and expected to learn the ways of our world and the ways, you know, and so I put myself in the shoes of like the school counselor with trying to support that type of student who I know nothing hardly about their country or their culture. What does their home life look like? Is it a multi-generational home? My home was that. I have no experience with that. Like, is there a lot of professional training around that? There's so many different realms out there that you don't know how to prepare for.
There are, I mean, I remember it was just a few days before I was hired as a school counselor, I went to a week-long training for ELL, because I was gonna be the ELL teacher
Yeah.
for the next year at the school. I mean, a lot of times you have to seek them out.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about, we don't have supervision per se, like our LPCs do, but we generally, you'll have a mentor. If there's not another counselor at the school, your mentor might be another teacher or admin. You will have some supervision, but that may be from admin who may not exactly understand your role, which is why I think it's important for us to talk to those admin and while we do those annual administrative conferences, which is where we kind of work through what our role was and what we want to look like. The other thing would be, like in Memphis, Shelby County Schools, I know they have a lot of trainings geared towards their school counselors. You go to a really small district, you're gonna have some in-service professional development days, but you're not gonna have things geared towards your school counselors. Like, I didn't have anything. Sometimes there might be something that the whole school, the whole district was getting like a tier 1 level that had been something that had been a concern coming up, that had come up in the past that they felt like needed to be addressed. And a lot of times that was on something more social emotional, but, I mean, that's what I've been told. I've been told they have more specific trainings towards it, but I haven't been to it. So, yeah.
But can
it's
yellow be
seeking them out.
something like, for me, it's not something I would be uncomfortable trying to deal with, I just don't.
Don't know. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I think that
That's how I interpret it.
like what I'm getting from what you're saying too is like the fear of not wanting to come across as being any type aware and sensitive because of navigating that, right?
Yeah,
And
or
so like,
rigid or punitive, like.
right, you just wanna understand, and I think that just being open-minded is one of the best ways to approach that too. Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense.
It's hard, it's
Yeah.
really hard.
Definitely.
My Addison did teach her new friend her name. She's
Oh,
not
good, good.
last week.
There you go.
She has a friend who doesn't speak, but you know what her language is?
I think Arabic, or
Okay.
one of